Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to week 2 of the wellness program. I'd like to start today's talk with a quote from Hippocrates, one of my favorite ancient Greeks who wrote wisely about health. He's best known for the Hippocratic Oath, the most famous line of which is "First do no harm." All medical students take that oath. He also demonstrated a lot of wisdom in his understanding of how to achieve health. And one of those wise things attributed to him is this quote, "That which is used develops, that which is not used wastes away." So we know that the path to health is relatively uncomplicated, has been known well as far back as the ancient Greeks and likely farther still, but for time immemorial, it has been a known path, but a path that's hard to stay on. And so we're here gathering as a community to try to help each other stay on the path to health. And today's topic is one that is uncomfortable to talk about, but that I, as your doctor, I hope have the special ability to address without offending people, because my reason to talk to you about your weight is solely about your health. So what I mean by that is I don't care about the body image and other baggage that comes with weight. What I care about is that if you are overweight, you are compromising your health. I want you to be well, and so for that reason, I want you to have a normal body weight. Because one of the main things that separates us individually and as a country from better health is being overweight and obese. So in order to talk about this topic, I will first define what obesity and overweight mean in terms of medical definitions. And so I'm going to raise this concept of the body mass index, or BMI. And body mass index is a mathematical calculation which is equal to your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. Now, before you take out your pens and pencils and try to convert inches to meters and all that sort of stuff, I would advise you that the best way to, or the easiest way at least, to derive this number is to punch your height in feet and inches and weight in pounds into Google, and it will spit out a number for you. We also calculate that number for you and can tell you. But a BMI of 30 or greater is obese, and a BMI between 25 and 30 is overweight. This is a visual of BMI in the ranges that I just spoke to you about again. So here is a normal weight individual between a BMI of 18.5 and 24.9. Overweight between 25 and 30, or 25 and 20.9. And you can see that as you increase now in the obese range here, and then various gradations of obesity, it becomes much more manifest, the weight problem, as you increase in size. I want to make one statement about BMI, which is that many people feel unfairly represented by BMI, such that I often hear people tell me, well, I've been working out a lot, so I've really increased my muscle, and that's why my weight is still in the wrong category. So one of my other side jobs is working as a team doctor for the NC State football team. And in that work, I sometimes encounter people who say weigh 230 pounds and they have almost zero body fat. And woe be to the person who gets run over by one of those individuals. These are people who are not a normal weight, but it is not pathologic. That is a very specific subset of the population, and most of us mere mortals do not have legitimate use of that excuse. So BMI is not perfect. There are variances in body frame, but generally, if you are too short for your weight, you're just that. So BMI pretty accurately will say whether you're a healthy weight or not. So over the next several slides, I'm going to show you maps of the prevalence of obesity by state in our country. And this slide just tells you how that data was generated. It was done by surveys conducted by the CDC. These were reported weights and heights, so some error rate here, but the overall trends that are reflected in this set of data are pretty compelling, and I think you'll find them to be so as well. So we're going to go through these maps fairly quickly. I'll just pause at a few points during the flow through the maps. Here is the first year of data in 1985. Many states not yet reporting data, but of those that do report data, the highest category is 10 to 14% of obesity. And here you can see they also show on this map another way to understand BMI, which is 30 pounds overweight for a 5'4" person. So more states reporting in here in the later 80s, everybody's still 10 to 14%, but increasing within that. And now here, we'll pause for a minute and we'll see there's a new category of 15 to 19% obesity, and we have Louisiana, Mississippi, West Virginia, Michigan leading the way in those categories. You'll see that general distribution is a trend here. And now getting more of the Southeast involved in Appalachia. And we'll pause here again. We have a new category of greater than 20%. Mississippi, Kentucky, I believe that's Indiana, leading the way in this category. But overall, the country is getting a good bit darker. And we have another category, greater than 25% obesity, now in Mississippi there. And I say darker, but you know what I mean. The prevalence is increasing everywhere. Now we have the category of greater than 30% obesity. Again, Louisiana, Mississippi, West Virginia. And this is the last year for which I have data shown in this format. And so over those 30 years, you can see that there has been a dramatic increase in the prevalence of obesity, such that in the first years that these surveys were taken, there was no state with greater than 15% obesity. And now in 2010 and beyond, there is no state with less than 15% obesity. So we are an obese and overweight nation, and the degree to which we are is a relatively new phenomenon. I'm going to talk to you the rest of the time about how we suspect that may have come about, or speculate some reasons why that may have come about, and then speak some to the health consequences of that. Here's another way of describing that weight change. This is BMI by county. So the counties in black are those with adults with greater than 30% obesity amongst the adults in that county. And you can see that Appalachia and the southeast, and especially the area east of 95, is heavily endowed with obesity, as most of us who've been in those areas can attest just by observation. So if we look at changes over time. Another way of seeing this, the average American man in 1984 weighed 168 pounds. The average American man in 2004, 180 pounds. Similarly, the average American woman, 142 in 1984 and 152 in 2004. Over that time, based on food consumption and production data collected by the USDA, the average increase in calorie consumption, which is kilocals here. Kilocal is a normal calorie, so that increase was 268 calories in men and 143 calories excess in women. Interestingly, those calories were entirely non-meal calorie increase, so actually the mealtime calories decreased and calories consumed on the way, so grazing or snacking, accounted for all of the increase in calories. And although portion size, you'll hear from the dietitians, is a problem, it seems that the general prevalence and availability of calories on every corner is perhaps the thing that plagues us the most. And another way of seeing that is in the available calories to consume per person. So the food supply, 3,200 kilocalories per day per person in 1978, 3,900 kilocalories per person in 1999. If there are people producing the food, they want somebody to consume the food, right? And it's just a simple problem of business and business economics. The population is not growing at a rate that is rapid enough to satisfy growth expectations of shareholder-owned corporations. So if you are a food corporation, you need to find a way to increase not just number of consumers, but amount of consumption per person. And by making food available to us, by marketing to us, by all kinds of things, we have easily been led to eat more than we need to eat, and the consequences are manifest in the maps that I just showed you. So we have 72 million obese adults in the United States, and by 2010 data calculated to approximately be $1,429 in excess of healthcare costs per obese adult, which calculates to $147 billion spent annually on healthcare due to obesity in the United States. It's a big number. As I told you last week, maintaining a normal weight and maintaining good fitness is good for you as an individual. It is also good for your country, and this is why. Here in the state of North Carolina, in 2010, we were at 29.3 obesity, 2.75 million people at $3.9 billion of additional healthcare costs. So where are those healthcare costs coming from, and what happens to us when we gain weight and become obese? I'll run through these topics briefly. Many of these we will touch on specifically in subsequent sessions. But going through these, things that might happen to you, you might die sooner. I'll show data soon to attest to that. You are very likely to become diabetic, and we think that about 80% of type 2 diabetes is accounted for by obesity. Again, we'll have a talk specifically on that in a few weeks. Hypertension, we'll have a talk on that. Hyperlipidemia, which is high cholesterol, gout, heart disease, stroke, deep venous thrombosis, that's blood clots in the legs and blood clots in the lungs, dementia. All these things are increased in obesity. Likewise, gallbladder disease, fatty liver, we'll have a talk on that. Gastroesophageal reflux, that's heartburn, hugely weight-related. Arthritis, especially in the weight-bearing joints, hips and knees. We'll have a talk on that. Sleep apnea, this is the tendency of your airway to collapse and make you stop breathing while you're sleeping. We'll have a talk on that. Various cancers are known to be increased in prevalence in conditions of obesity. our reproductive systems don't work right. Women don't menstruate normally. Men have hormonal changes, have a decrease in testosterone and increase in female hormones when they're obese. That affects reproduction. There are other urinary issues. There are all kinds of problems. And these are all the things that I don't want you to have, many of which you don't need to have, or you can significantly mitigate. And another old saying here to close, mens sana in corpore sano, that is healthy mind and a healthy body. Specifically, I suppose speaks mostly to dementia here on this slide, but again, these are long-standing known truths. Healthy mind and healthy body go together. This slide, I want to just briefly show you the correlation between weight and prevalence of diabetes. So if you look at the top slides, here is ones we've already seen. This is prevalence of obesity. The lower slides here are prevalence of diabetes. You can see that the slides are very similar. There's clearly correlation, and on our diabetes day, I will speak to you about causation, but clearly these two things are tracking together, and the obesity epidemic and the diabetes epidemic in our country go hand in hand. This is a look at 4 chronic conditions and their relationship to obesity. So it's type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cholelithiasis, which is gallbladder disease, and coronary heart disease, which is blockages in your arteries around your heart. The top is women, the bottom is men. This is plotting relative risk of the condition against BMI. As you increase the BMI, you increase the rate of all these conditions. And you'll notice that normal BMI is 25. There's already significant increase below 25 as we increase. And so although we set 25 as normal, it may not be ideal. And we'll talk in a subsequent slide about what is ideal. But what is clear here is that as you increase in weight, and definitely when you get into the overweight and approach the obese categories, your rates of all these conditions are increased. I said I'd speak to you about death. We know that obesity causes folks to live shorter lives. Some of the specific data we have attesting to that is from a couple of big population studies in this country. Framingham is a town south of Boston, Massachusetts, and we've been collecting data on people in Framingham for most of the 20th century. Health data, so everything that is measurable about health in Framingham has been measured, and that allows folks to go back and look at trends in the population, such as this group did, to look at the effects of obesity on longevity. And what they found was that if you were obese at age 40 and you lived in Framingham, you were going to live 7.1 fewer years as a woman and 5.8 fewer years as a man. Similarly, NHANES, this is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey data, another big population that's been studied. If at BMI of greater than 45, by judging that data, there were 13 years of lost life for a man and 8 years of lost life for a woman. This is what is called the J-shaped curve of mortality. I think you can see why it's called a J-shaped curve here. The black is men and the red is women. What these are showing is rates of death in a population. So this is number of deaths per 1,000 people. And over here on the this axis, you see this is 16 per 1,000, 32 per 1,000, 64 per 1,000, and so on. So in a defined population, how many people die per year, per 1,000? And the lowest incidence of death in both men and women is right here at a BMI of approximately 23. And you can see that as you increase in BMI, your mortality goes up correspondingly, and same if you decrease excessively in BMI. So over here are conditions like anorexia, conditions that cause wasting like cancer and HIV, but up in this direction are all sorts of chronic illnesses which which shorten life. So the takeaway from this is that the ideal for longevity is a BMI of about 23. I'm not expecting all of you to be perfect, but that's perfect if you're shooting at it, BMI of 23. So in general, in my talks over the next few weeks, I hope to impart first a bit of a depressing message about what could happen, what is happening in our population in general. But I want to end on a positive. So if the negative is that we can cause ourselves ill health, the upside is that we can also cause ourselves to be healthy. And that is also demonstrated in studies just as the opposite is. And so one of the best studies that I have seen demonstrating the health benefits of fitness comes out of Norway. This was a study that was done a number of years ago and published in 1993. Studies of this sort are hard to conduct because they follow these people for 16 years, and folks move around, and it's hard to keep track of them, and so tracking a population like this is challenging. A population like Norway is a great place to study, where there's relatively less immigration and emigration, and where the population is less diverse, so that there's less variation that would be expected based on genetic variants. So homogeneous, relatively stable population. And they were able to study nearly 2,000 men over 16 years, and they divided these men by fitness quartile. So they took middle-aged and upper middle-aged men, 40 to 59 years, at entry into the study. They were not ill. They were excluded if they had any types of illness, or if they were smokers or other chronic conditions. And they observed what happened to these folks. And every year they had them come in and do an exercise stress test on a bicycle that measured their level of fitness. They were divided by least healthy quartile number 1 to most healthy quartile number 4, and then were tracked. And the main outcome that was tracked was death. So over that time period, there were 271 deaths, and here it is broken up by fitness quartile. And it's quite remarkable, the difference. There were 106 deaths in the least fit quartile. There were 61 breaking that down further, CV deaths means cardiovascular death, so that's strokes and heart attacks. 61 in the least fit quartile, only 11 in the most fit quartile. A couple of observations about this that I think are important. Number one is, no matter what you do, you might die. And in fact, no matter what you do, you will die. So even if you did everything right and you stayed fit, there was death in that population. So we can run all we want, but we cannot escape variables such as luck and heredity. But that being said, if you were a betting man, you'd be much more likely to bet on the longevity of this group over this group, right? And while the measure of a worthy life is not solely its duration, certainly we can't accomplish the things we intend to accomplish in life if we're not here anymore. So I want you to live well. Most importantly, I'd like you ideally to live well and long, but most importantly, well. In any case, this study out of Norway gives compelling evidence that staying fit has measurable benefits and will increase the duration of your life. And though not studied in this particular study, I can attest to you as your physician that it will increase your quality of life. So let's go forth and pursue better health together. All right. We'll see you in the gym.